This is why Anthony Fantano sounds like a dum-dum when he talks and does things. This is not just Anthony Fantano, but this is most of the people talking about music, fans, everyone, because, basically we don't have the right words, and we don't have the right words or words that makes no, here's what it is. When you don't have words that make sense for what you're trying to discuss or talk about, you don't have a framework for which you can organize your thoughts and you can actually effectively communicate your ideas to other people. And I think if we fix kind of the way we speak about things and actually develop some frameworks that are usable and actually make sense, we'll have an easier time talking to people, thinking about reviewing music, art in general, things like that, movies, films, yada, 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 right? So that's kind of, I do a whole series breaking down, is this going to be called slop or not? Yada, yada, yada. But the whole thing kind of boils down to people like Fantano and these other people, they're not talking about the same things. And same with even Rotten Tomatoes is a dumb thing, right? Oh, this horror movie is 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. You're like, how am I supposed to know, like, it's good? What do you mean? What's good? What part of it's good? Right? Same with a lot of music. And so really, I think same with film and same with music, it all kind of comes down to this. We look at music, when people generally, in most contexts, are talking about something as good, they mean, when it comes to music, this bottom here is memorable, iconic, catchy, etc. from 0 to 10. When they say good, they usually mean something, let's say there's a cutoff at like 7 out of 10, and anything past that is good. Basically, that even if you're not a fan of that style of, let's say, movie or music or whatever, if it's at least a 7 out of 10 in terms of quality, right? In music, it tends to be catchiness, memorability, right? How iconic it is, right? Or how iconic, yada, yada, yada. And in film, it tends to be, or movies or plays, it tends to be how well written is the plot, i.e., does it work in a way that it makes you feel all of the emotions for the characters? That even if the performances weren't there, the cinematography wasn't there. Yeah, if all the set design wasn't there, some of these external characteristics, if you just had, bullet point version of the plot, and you had to put but and therefore between all of the different plot points, the guys from South Park talk about this, right? That's why a South Park episode that is just, even though it is just there to make, kind of childish jokes about these different things that are current events, they say, well, we need to have plot points that have but and therefore in between them so that the quality of the actual art is good. Because then we can add on whatever aesthetic, right, with our humor and the visuals and all of these other things and the sounds and the mixing and the sound design. All of that can be layered on, but we want a foundation, a skeleton, that's actually but and therefore that's good. It's quality. It's at least a 7 out of 10 good, right? Because then you actually have a solid foundation for what you're doing, right? And likewise, you end up with that in music, right? And so the problem is you have people who will conflate all of these things, right? Right? And so I'll give you a good example is when you're looking at music, right? Horror movies, let's say horror movies are supposed to be like metal, right? There's a reason for music. This is what I have it set up for, right? But you've got catchiness, memorability, iconic, yada, 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 right? And then on this side, we have energy, it says, but really energy and or intensity, right? And this roughly kind of correlates with different genres. A sleepy intensity is stuff that makes you wind down for the end of the night. For some people, it's romantic music, right? And then from 4 to 7, let's say, in terms of intensity, is, music that's upbeat, makes you dance. And then this is like violent, aggressive, maximum intensity, right? Lowest intensity, medium intensity, and then overwhelmingly intense or, starting to get into that area range, right? So a horror movie, people actually are not, so let's say the tomato meter, let's say instead it said quality, plot quality, like how logical of a plot, how effective of a bullet skeleton, the skeleton score, how many bones, does it get 10 bones out of 10? 10 out of 10 bones, 100 bones out of the 100, whatever. You can do 212 or whatever, how many bones the human body has. I don't know off the top of my head. But you would make a bone score, and you'd be like, okay, how many bones does it have for how much is this quality, let's say, right? But then you would say intensity. A horror movie, I imagine, the goal of a horror movie is for it to be intense and to scare you and to provoke really strong emotions. Now, do I think, because here's the thing, I don't really, horror movies either do work on me and then I don't like it because I don't like being that intensity and being like fight or flight worked up all the time watching a movie. That's not an enjoyable experience for me, right? But if that's what the goal is with a horror movie. So for me, if anything, I guess if it's a horror movie that's kind of like in this range between, maybe it's on the border, maybe it's at an 8, where it's intense, you might get scared at some points, but it's not just like, oh my god, I'm just scared. And now, especially if the horror movie is kind of scary, right? But also is a really good story, that's where you're going to win me over. Because I won't watch a horror movie even if it's really scary, but the plot sucks. If the plot is less than a 6 or something, right, in terms of catchiness, I don't like being scared. I will tolerate some being scared because something is good in terms of quality, because it's a good movie. Good movie, what does that mean? Catchy. I guess in here I talk music, but for film it would be well written. That's the word. That's the word. Well written. Well written. 10 out of 10 bones. If it was a well written movie, I will suffer it being above my intensity. Outside of, let's say, I prefer the intensity to be between a 4 and a 7, right? In terms of how intense I like my movies, right? Okay, well, I will tolerate things on either extreme, less or more intense, because it's well written. Because how well written it is, I will put up with it being outside of my preferences in terms of this other characteristic, right? And so the main thing when it comes to music and when it comes to film is how well written is it? There you go. I realized it. It's the universal thing. How well written is it? How good is the songwriting? How good is the writing? Script writing, film writing. I don't know what the word is. Playwright. How good is the scripting? The scribature. I'm doing scribing, right? All of that kind of stuff. That's where you get. I know I'm doing faces. I got to do faces to keep myself, awake. It's past my bedtime. It's 8 p.m. But basically, I said, why Anthony Fantano? So to finish with the metal example, it's great because you would say for metal, horror movies, metal, same thing, high intensity art, right? Or you're like, oh, I get now why Slipknot has like scary things and horror band. It's like, duh. But basically, the whole thing comes down to if you're talking about a horror movie, like people are talking about these horror movies, and I watch them and I just go, this isn't a good movie. And people are like, but it's 100% Rotten Tomatoes. What they're not breaking down is, yes, it's 100% good at being in the energy range. It achieves that. If you just want to feel that emotion and that intensity, it is effective at delivering that intensity. 100% effective, actually. But if you're talking about quality, is it a good movie? Is it a well-written movie? How well written is it out of 100? It's like a 4. I don't want to be scared, especially if it's going to be awful. It's like, it's not worth it then. I didn't get anything out of it. I put up with this thing to get a thing to get nothing, right? And so if they just said, how terrifying is it? 100% terrifying. How well written is it? Separate score, 4 out of 10. Then instantly I don't go, oh, it's a bad movie. I can go, well, it's not well written, but it's scary. Well, I don't care about it. I don't want scary movies. You know what I mean? So I go, okay, good. I'll skip it. Versus other people who do want the scary movie are going to be like, oh my God, that's great. It's a 10 out of 10 on scariness. Okay, let me go see it. Right? And so we don't put that on Rotten Tomatoes. Put that in your reviews of things, right? Like that. Like if I'm talking about the first Slipknot album, great example. If you take all of the songs in the first Slipknot album, maybe there's a couple that eke into the 6 and 7 range. But in terms of how well written, how catchy they are, yada yada yada, how like after one listen, how much is it going to get drilled into your brain? Wait and Bleed maybe is like a 7.5 in terms of catchiness, right? The verses are a little boring on Wait and Bleed. I like that song anyways, but like it's not nearly as catchy as Duality by Slipknot. I'm just using Slipknot as a good example because the reason is it's the similar thing to the horror thing, right? And you can do the exact same thing on the lower intensity end, or if you're someone who just likes R&B and like jazz, maybe this applies to, pop music, what tends to be kind of in this like upbeat range, right? Not the, yada yada yada. Anyways, so when you're talking about Slipknot, that whole first album, I go, oh, it's good. Really, I should say, it's metal, or it's because it's in that energy level, but really it's effective. It's 100% effective when it comes to reaching that intensity zone. When I'm working out and I do not have the energy in here, but I need to have the energy in my soul, put in the headphones, put on something that's up in that range, boom. Slipknot does that. It gives me the energy and the intensity that I need, right? It's 100% effective in terms of energy and intensity. Right? For whatever given energy level it's supposed to be putting me at, it's 100% effective at that. So you would say maximum intensity, 100% efficacy, right? And then you would go over here, almost like 40 proof. It's almost like alcohol, right? Right? But then likewise, when you look at, I'm not saying I have this whole thing figured out, but I'm saying this is why Anthony Fantano, this is one of the many reasons why Anthony Fantano and all of these other people talking about music, not all, but most, not all, most of the people, they sound stupid. Not even, maybe they don't sound stupid, but what they're saying is stupid and or low utility to you. When you're watching it, you're going, based off this review, do I know if I'm going to probably like this album or not? And therefore, it's a good idea for me to try. Like, if you told me, oh, this is a really good horror movie, I'm like, okay, maybe I should go watch it. If you told me it was a scary movie or whatever, maximum intensity movie, and it's 100% effective at being maximum intensity, but the well-written score is 4 out of 10, I would go, oh, you say good movie overall, averaging these two things out, or whichever one you prefer, you know what I mean? And I would go, oh, to me, I don't want to watch that at all. So seeing that review, if someone goes, it's 100% scary, and it's, it's not well written, but it's really scary, I would go, okay, great. Good for other people. I'm not going to go see it. That was useful information. It let me actually determine decisions. It saved me time. And I'm not going to the comments because instead, let's say the movie is a 10 out of 10, right, in terms of catchiness, and it's an 8 in terms, or let's say it's supposed to be scary up here, but it's, it's scary for parts of it. So on average, it's not that scary, right? It has scary parts, and it has, medium intensity parts, but it's really well written. It's like, well, if you tell me that, I'm going to go want to see it, right? Because I am a sucker for really well-written movies. Well-written, I defined it, the South Park thing, right? Boom, boom, boom. But, therefore, right, everything is logical. It follows from the next thing. And then, you can get into more stuff about like, oh, throw in something fun, yada, yada, yada. But this is the thing. And so I'm not saying I've got the perfect framework. I figured it all out. No, by no means, right? A comedy, I think, a similar thing when it comes to comedy movies. People go, oh, it's a great comedy. Like, I'll give you a good example. I think a movie like Hot Tub Time Machine. Hot Tub Time Machine, I think, works as a movie, period. It's an 8 out of 10 well-written script. Good, it's got a message. It's got things going on. It's fun. It punches you with stuff. And then, but maybe it's not the funniest movie ever all the time, right? Maybe it's only an 8 out of 10 on how humorous it is, right? How laugh out loud funny. But it's also an 8 out of 10 in terms of being well written. So for me, I'm like, you checked both boxes. You got past a 7 on both, right? But for other people, they might be like, I prefer whatever scary movie, which is maybe a 3 in terms of catchy, or how well written it is, 3 out of 10. It's maybe not as well written, or one of the scary movies. The first one maybe not. But some of the other scary movies, they might be well written, but also not, oh no, they might be like more funny, even though they're just poorly written. And so for me, I would rather have a movie that is sufficiently good in both things rather than just good at one or just good at the other. Right? Actually, for me, I would rather have a movie that's just well written, even if it's low energy. I'm fine with that, right? As long as it's well written. Here's the problem. movie like Blade Runner, a band like Deftones or Radiohead or any of these things, right? People go, oh wow, they're so great. It's amazing. One aspect is good. Sufficiently good. One aspect is sufficiently good. It is the wallpaper. It is the aesthetic. It's a vibe. Now, here's the thing. If something has an immaculate vibe that's very unique and good, and it's well written, and if, let's say, it's a comedy, it's funny, or let's say it's a horror, it's scary, boom, you've strictly made it better, right? A great example is Sinners. The plot just becomes like, not, what? But it's very pretty. It's very good looking. It is a great, beautiful wallpaper. But it's not well written. The writing, if you just took that script, not the visuals, you just took the plot points, if you did the 10 bullet points of the things that happens. There's guys, they go into a town, they come back, yada, yada, yada. There's a little bit of this thing about, like, whole thing. I have a million things I could say about Sinners, and the fact that I don't think the plot is as well written as it could have been by a long shot. Not that there wasn't good ideas or things that could have been really, really well written, but they just did not put the time to go through. It looked like a rough draft of a movie that could have been really, really well written. The draft of the writing. I'm not saying the cinematography, because the cinematography was amazing. But that's the same thing with, like, Blade Runner, right? The cinematography is amazing. The movie, with the writing, not the best. Radiohead, they have amazing sounds. Like these palettes, right? But it's just sonic wallpaper. It's just there, and then it doesn't do anything or go anywhere. Same with Blade Runner, same with all these things. They kind of meander. And you'll see that a lot with horror movies, and people are like, this is a great horror movie, this is so good. And you're like, no, as a movie, how well written, usually when people say, oh, this is a great movie, a lot of times they're talking about how well written it is. But I realize maybe that's just me. Maybe that's what I think when I go, well, if a movie is written horribly and it's scary, I don't go, oh, wow, it's a great movie. I say it's a scary movie. When a movie is really funny, but it's poorly written, I say, wow, it's a really funny movie. I don't say it's a good movie. When Radiohead comes up with really cool sounds, I say they come up with really cool sounds. I don't say Radiohead has good albums. They don't. They have a couple good songs. You've got Creep, you've got Just off whatever the Bends. The rest of, like, the Bends and OK Computer just sounds like Blur and Oasis spit up and just kind of like chewed Baby Bird into the mouth of hipsters without the essential nutrients there that make Blur or Oasis actually, like, the actual, you know what it is? It's the order of good writing and catchy things. There's a reason why the songs that are on the top 10 or the top 100 of Billboard over the last, 70 years of modern music, they all vary wildly in terms of style, how scary or intense or not intense, or how funny or not funny. All of these things. But you know what they don't do? They don't go down in terms of how well they're written. Sucker! So when people say good or bad, it's writing. Generally speaking, not everything. Primus, they do not write music particularly well. I like Primus, but I can acknowledge that the music that they have put out on their studio albums, in general, is not well written, i.e. at least a 7 in terms of how well written it is. But I still like them because they have interesting musicality. Out of 10, they have moments that are really hype or get me to a good energy level that I like, right? A good example of an 8 out of 10 and an 8 out of 10 is, let's say, Rage Against the Machine. A lot of Rage Against the Machine gets you up to this energy level and is well written and catchy. So that's why, in spite of their polarizing lyrics and their polarizing frontman, they're nearly ubiquitously consumed by people because the quality's there. Because they're good. What? Oh my God! So if you like a specific pontific, if you like a specific art style, if you like a thing, you like whether it being metal or being intensity, whether it's how funny it is, whether it's how inspiring the musicianship is, all of these things, whatever your thing is for you, that you care about, that you like, whatever that is for you, if you have that and it's well written, guess what? It's going to reach more people. That's why the Rush songs that are well written, even though they usually end up around this intensity, they don't go into the metal zone. The reason Rush is seen as a great band is because they had a critical number of songs that were really well written that could cross over to everyone. Shocker. Why do you think Metallica, despite being up here in the metal zone, which usually is way too intense for nearly everyone, why do they seem to be ubiquitously loved and recognized as they're goats, they're goated, bah, 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 goats? Well, because they have enough songs that are well written. They're good. So, if you're going to say something's good or bad, 100%, certified fresh, that should be referring to well written or not well written. If we're going off of what happens in the past. So if I'm trying to map what people say and actually talk about stuff like that, so you can go, oh, I heard this review. So right now, if I told you there's a band, trying to think of one, but if I wanted to tell you of a band and you told me, oh, I like this band, and I was like, oh, okay, I could observe trends. Like if you told me you like Deftones, right? I could go, okay, so Deftones does not have well-written music, not because they don't have the talent. You can see they have a couple songs that are really well written, but just for them, they don't need to, because just getting pretty things. So if this is the pretty things, change it from intensity to cool sounds. If they have a 0 to 11 cool sounds, they hit the 9 out of at least the 9. They're up in the top range. They're at least a 7 out of 10 in terms of making cool sounds, even though their catchiness is not, it doesn't meet the threshold for being good, right? They don't have to write good music in terms of songwriting to gain an audience, right? And so if I know you tell me, hey, I like things as long as they're really cool, even though they're not well written, if it has cool sounds, I'm going to like it, then I can go, okay, well, Radiohead also has really cool sounds, even though the songs aren't as well written as they can be, right? So that lets me actually make statements that go, oh, well, if this, then that. It's called logic. If I can map cause and effect, if I can give you a framework that predicts things, you are now smarter. You're not as dumb. Not that you're dumb, but the way we're talking kind of, it's the whole concept of 1984 by George Orwell. Not the whole concept, but the idea of newspeak is the idea that if they removed all of the words in the dictionary to express, discontent with the status quo, with the, social order, with the governing bodies, all of these things, the institutions, if they can remove the words and the ways to verbalize your consent and actually pinpoint what the things are that you're disgruntled about and why, and what needs to happen to change them, and not just, a branch, but the root of the tree that has sickened you to death. If they remove the words that actually let you parse through that and say discontent and, verbalize these things, then it becomes hard for you to even think it, because your subconscious doesn't have any way to speak things. There's a very, what is it, Schadenfreude. It's a German word. This is an example of how in some languages, there's words in that language that there isn't, you can't, there's no word that's the same thing in English for Schadenfreude in German. Schadenfreude means like when people get pleasure out of someone else failing, right? And so people don't like someone else and they're like, yes, I'm so happy to see their downfall, right? The fall of, or what is it? They've fallen off. And then click on the YouTube video, or I don't know, like the MCU is dead, Marvel's dead, or this band sucks, or all of these things. It's getting pleasure in other people's pain, yada yada yada. I know I'm belaboring it, but that's the kind of the concept. Google it. You have Google, but Schadenfreude, it's something like that, right? And so then you take Schadenfreude and you try and you see how long it took me to try and say it in English. It was a pain. And I still probably didn't get it perfect, right? You see what I'm saying? And so that's kind of the concept of this entire thing. If you don't have a framework to actually discuss things, it sounds stupid. Likewise, Fantano will take Primus, for example. The thing where they're a 7 out of 10 or higher on is virtuosity or how impressive their musicianship is. Same with Polyphia, right? Polyphia gets virtuosity checkbox in terms of being above a 7 out of 10, right? Being sufficiently good in that area. But they also, on top of Primus, where Primus does, which is get that checkbox for virtuosity, Polyphia, for example, gets a checkbox for making pretty sounds like Radiohead. So if you want the best of Primus and Radiohead, you would just listen to Polyphia. But Polyphia is so poorly written in terms of catchiness, memorability, iconic, because it gets so boring. It's so predictable. Even if you're doing fast things, if they're boring, it stops being cool. Maybe it's a cool sound still, but the song quality. I think if the song quality is like really bad, it's unlistenable, then it doesn't matter how good you are at other things because people tune out, right? So that's actually an interesting example where Primus and Radiohead, their songs might be in like the 3 to 6 range or the 4 to. Oh, I'm reconnecting. What am I reconnecting to? I'm recording on here. You get the concept. So, well, I don't know. What do you think? How do you want to phrase things? The video's acting up. Blah, 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 blah. What should I talk about next time? I'll see you in the next video.
Like, subscribe. Thank you.